Dr. Survé, welcome to this special edition of the Armstrong-Williams Show. Unlike many of our broadcasts, we're not in our beloved the United States of America. Tell us where we are.
Well, Armstrong, thank you for having me on your show, and you are very, very privileged to be in Cape Town, probably the nicest and the best place in the world today.
You know, I'm a student of history, but I'm also a student of the wild, and I often think about, if someone asked me my favorite animal, I would probably say it's the wolf, particularly the alpha male who leads his pack. And the alpha male is not necessarily there to fight. He's there to protect, make sure that everybody's fed, at the same time protected. I look at you in the truest sense of an alpha male when you look at what you've done with Survé, Serve investments, philanthropy, the number of people you've employed, especially during the height of apartheid when many people had nowhere to go. They had no homes, there were no communities. They did not know how they were going to support their families. So I'd love for you to explain to our American audience how you stepped in at that moment and what you were able to build. We're giving people opportunities, family stability, and also reminding people that if you protect the greatest resource of mankind, which is a human resource, and you don't subject it to apartheid, to bigotry, some of the worst forms of immorality, if you empower your people, what they can become. And you're just an example of what so many people could become who lives in these shanty towns today. So tell us that story.
But let's start at the end. The end is that the best thing you can do to anyone in this world today is to give them an opportunity to create a life for themselves, to improve themselves, to become an entrepreneur, a professional, an actor, a musician, but also employment. Employment brings a lot of dignity because it allows for a sense of self-worth. It gives you an income to be able to send your children to school, to be able to pay for your health care, for your roof over your head. But it's got a much more wider effect than that. It helps you to give back into your community. So we, as a family, we employ just under 10,000 people in a country where the unemployment amongst the youth is close to 65%. And most of our employees are young people under the age of 35. And the impact of that 10,000 is probably closer to about 100,000 dependents out there. So I think that really is, what makes a difference and what allows me to get up every morning with a determination. You may call it the alpha wolf. I just call it a responsibility to our people and our country to be able to give people the dignity, that they can have dignity, to can live a normal life. And I think fundamentally at a time in the world where people focus on differences, they focus on super wealth, if you like, on image and status, there are very basic things that people need in life, and that is to have a roof over their heads, to go to a decent school, have food on the table, to be able to do whatever they want to do religiously without fearing anyone, to have the freedom of the media, freedom of the right to say what you wish to say. Those are fundamentals that have never changed, and I think that's what we try and achieve in a small way. Yes, the impact is huge, but for us as a family, we wish we could do more, but we do what we can.
Now, dignity and self-respect and self-worth is so important. And when you're employed, working by the sweat of your brow, learning skills, not only set an example for the children at home, that mama and dad are off to work, and there's a reason why there's food on the table, there's a reason why there's clothing on their back, there's a reason why they can live. Talk about dignity and respect, especially in this post-apartheid moment that we find ourselves in.
Well, the two go hand in hand. Dignity and respect go hand in hand. Number one is that the first part of dignity is someone has a decent job. Let's keep it as basic as that. Of course, one can become an entrepreneur, etc. But just to have an income, a decent income, that you have a sense of self-worth, that, is something we must never underestimate. No one wants a handout. No one wants to come into this world wanting a handout. People want to be able to work, to be able to earn a living, and to be able to feed the family. And our role as leaders in this world, in this country certainly, is to provide them with those opportunities. And the market economy is absolutely fundamental to achieving that. So it is the great way to create jobs and to stimulate employment and for people to have dignity. Respect is something that, I learned from my parents. You respect every single person, irrespective of culture, background, religion, wealth, status. They inspired me to believe that everyone is deserving of your respect, irrespective of what they do. The cleaner that cleans your home, the person in the street, it doesn't matter who you are. So that's something which I believe, and if you respect people, you are respecting their dignity as well. But the person that probably inspired one even more was Nelson Mandela, because in my early days as a young doctor accompanying Nelson Mandela in different places, I always saw wherever we went, the first people he greeted were those that were, cleaning the place, the people that were even working in the kitchens, etc., etc. He never first greeted let's call it the important VIPs, and he always spoke to everyone. He never spoke down on anyone. He spoke to them as if they were his equals. And I think if you accord people that kind of respect, you're actually respecting them, and you're allowing them to have dignity out there. So, life, the most amazing people in this world have come from difficult backgrounds. They've come from poverty. They've come from different challenges in their lives, but they've excelled to really do well. And we sometimes forget that. We only see the end product. We don't see what went into that. It's like making a cake, baking a cake. You don't see the ingredients. You don't see everything that happens. You just see the cake and you appreciate the cake. So life is like that, and people are like that.
Can I ask you a very candid question? It's very candid. I've never flown into Cape Town during the daytime. Of the many times I've come, it's always been at night. This time, sunshine is the disinfectant for the truth. I never realized the number of shanty towns on both sides of that airport. 1.3 million people. I never seen so much homelessness, almost 10%. I was really struck by it, and I asked myself this question: what has changed since apartheid?
You're right. Charles Dickens famously said in The Tale of Two Cities that it is a tale of two cities. Cape Town is a tale of two cities. We have about 20% of the population that are living in wealth, middle class. Some that are extremely wealthy, and some that are middle class. And then we have 80% of the population who happen to be black in Cape Town that are living in poverty.
80%?
80%. So people sometimes forget that Cape Town, because of apartheid, the structural aspect of apartheid, if you're living near the mountain, the southern suburbs, Atlantic seaboard, the waterfront, those areas were reserved strictly for whites. In fact, any black people, of course, black people lived across all of those areas from hundreds of years. And what happened over time, apartheid was legislated to actually move people out of these areas to what we today call the Cape Flats, which is about 10 to 20 kilometers away from Table Mountain, if you like. Now, the majority of people living in those areas happened to be black because they were moved out because of apartheid. And there's, as I said earlier, there's amongst the youth, there's 65 to 70% unemployment. If you take underemployment, it's probably 80%. In the country itself, it's 35% unemployment, and underemployment probably close to 45%. So the reality is that Cape Town is really a tale of two cities.
But
Right?
is it a microcosm of the larger South Africa?
Very much so, very much so, very much so. So you have a situation where the economy, if we go back to apartheid, the economy was controlled by 5 families, white families. Today, the economy is controlled by probably about 10 white families. That's the capital markets, the stock exchange, etc. And black people have very little part of the macroeconomy still today.
Control beside the taxing business here.
Well, black people really don't control anything. The reality is there are a few beneficiaries of black economic empowerment in the country that have become wealthy, but they are by far the exception. You know, you're talking less than 1% of the capital
So
base
the
of
question
country.
is, why hasn't it changed?
There are a lot of debates about all
No
of that.
debate.
There's a
Just
lot
why
of
hasn't it
debates.
changed?
It hasn't changed, I think, because the structure of apartheid remains today. So
It's still in place.
There's a simple maxim in life. If you have the capital, you're going to become more richer. There are exceptions to that. Like myself, I came from a poor, humble background, and I was able to, accumulate capital and wealth over time, which I can then give back to society.
So let me stop you. So would you say it's worse today?
In
Think about it.
equality terms, yes, of course.
It is worse.
In Gini, well, scientifically speaking, or data, Gini coefficient is much worse today, definitely. So there are some people that wrongly, I'm saying, would say that, black people were better off during apartheid, but that's not true at all, not by any means. But what they're referring to is the Gini coefficient. In other words, take a simple example. You take South Africa's wealthiest man, Johan Rupert. I think his wealth is today about probably close to $15 billion. During apartheid, right until the democracy, I don't think his wealth was worth more than $1 billion. So his wealth has gone up, 15 times.
15x.
Absolutely.
Wow.
So if you look at, and that's happened to all those that were white, who happened to have ownership of the capital markets, of the property, of the businesses. Remember one important thing. Under apartheid...
Hold that point. Dr. Iqbal served as our guest today. I'm Armstrong Williams. We're in Cape Town, South Africa. Riveting, right? The more things change, I guess, the more they remain the same. And we'll be back. Welcome back. Please continue.
Well, if you have capital, you're always going to have the opportunity, and that opportunity gives you more wealth. And
Is it just capital?
yes, by and large.
Do you have equality in education?
No, you have to understand the context. And I've said this in a speech on Sunday evening. We must not be captive to our past. We must not use the past to make excuses for the present. Let's not do that. But let's also be fair. If you don't have the context to a situation, you cannot actually understand it well. The context is that apartheid legislated that black people cannot be in business, that black people cannot go to universities, that black people cannot be in the mainstream economy. It was legislated. You couldn't get any licenses. You couldn't go and study at the universities. And I'll give you a concrete example of that in a minute. And you certainly could not get the capital from state institutions. Neither could you get them from the banks that were all only there for the 10% of the population that was white. That is what apartheid did. But apartheid went a little bit more further than that. It took away land or property rights is the basis of all wealth in the world today, no matter what you say. apartheid took away the land that black people had by legislating that they no longer could stay on the land which was there from the times of their forefathers, even if they'd built homes on that land.
So what has changed that is much better today?
Yes, there's definitely,
For the 80%.
there's definitely the first. So apartheid, the state didn't allow media freedom. Today we have media freedom.
But
It did
media
not-
freedom, you can have media freedom. I'm talking about the way these people live every day. When you talk about living, media freedom is irrelevant to them.
I think it's important because it allows us to be able to tell the story,
You tell the story,
Yeah,
but
and
the story's not changing.
and the narrative is important. That's why we bought the media as a family. We invested in the media to be able to tell the story of South Africans that are not benefiting from what's happening. But we also have our democracy. We have a great constitution. And you're rightly going to say, but Doc, people can't eat the constitution, right? Yeah, no, you're right. So we need to do a lot more. But let's also...
when?
Let's also...
What is your,
let's-
you look out this window, you look way into the future. When?
I think the sooner the better. Look, let's also
What is sooner?
accept. Let's
What is-
accept.
what is sooner?
Mandela.
This is not a personal thing, but what is sooner for them? 100 years down the road?
No.
200?
So I think that if let's again look at the statistics. This is a wealthy country. It
Well, not for the
only-
80% though.
It's a wealthy country. It only has 60 million people, and it's got an enormous amount of resources. If we put our minds together as South Africans, black and white, we're able to lift the lives of everyone. If we are determined, it starts with an intention.
So let me be balanced here, because I have to ask this question. People are not going to like this question. Well, it would be me if I didn't ask this question. What accountability does that population have in that 80% that they can improve on and be better?
Well, they can vote they can vote someone into power. They have the right to vote, and certainly.
Do they exercise it?
Up to now, they've given the ANC, which is led by Cyril Ramaphosa today, the right to lead the country. But that will change. The ANC has lost in the last 3 elections.
It's persona non grata, many people think.
It's gone from 60% down to 40%. It probably will not achieve, that 60% ever again. So the electorate is voting with their hands, and they're basically saying, listen, if you don't change our lives, we will vote you out of power. So that's great, because they have the right to do that. And that's the essence of democracy, right? But that's not going to help them in the short term. But let me give an example where things have changed, because we have to be fair always. But if you take the University of Cape Town, which is just over here, up the road on the mountain, it is one of the world's top universities, consistently ranked in the top 100 in the world today. Its medical school, certainly when I went to train there as a doctor, was in the top 10 in the world. It was where the world's first human-to-human heart transplant was performed. However, until 1990, that university was legislated, segregated for whites only. That's important to understand, which meant that from 100 years ago to the present or so, the university was only for whites, except round about the 1980s, the government realized that they needed to have some black doctors, some black engineers, some black lawyers, some black teachers. So they allowed depends on the medical faculty, the faculty that I went to, they allowed 5% of the faculty. So in my class of just over 200, for example, there were only 12 of us that were not white. Yet there were 20 times more non-white students in the country than there were white students.
Well,
So to give it just statistically, out of the 200 people in our first year medical class, say 190 was for whites, the places, and and 10 were for non-whites. Now, today, the majority of the students at the universities are black. So, yeah. But what that meant for 50 years, you had very few black doctors, you had very few black engineers, you had practically no one in business at universities. There were no MBAs for black people. You had, very few university skills black people, because it was engineered by apartheid that you couldn't attend these universities.
But it has dramatically changed now.
That's the point I'm making.
Yeah. So I want to get into, I really want our audience to understand your businesses. I want to get into the media. I like to get into the financial sector. Break down your enterprises for us.
So let me just again give context to and add to what we've just said before, right? The first thing is that to be a member of the World Economic Forum is extremely prestigious, but extremely difficult to be invited to become a member, because it's the world's top 1,000 companies and your big US corporations and your Microsofts, your Googles, etc., all members, as are the others in the globe today. In South Africa, this is important to understand, there are 20 companies that are members of the World Economic Forum. Of those 20 companies, 17 of those were members before apartheid. Only 3 more have been added since apartheid. And of the 3, only 2 are black, and that is Patrice Motsepe's company and ours. That gives you a clear understanding of the macroeconomy in this country. In Africa as a whole, just out of interest, there are only 32 companies or entities. In fact, I must be very correct. I must call them entities that are members of the World Economic Forum in the whole of Africa. So that tells you in terms of size, in terms of influence, in terms of capital, how very few black companies have actually been able to succeed in South Africa today. So we are a member of the World Economic Forum, and I'm actually the longest serving South African attending the World Economic Forum. And we were invited to join the forum in 2007. We were the first black entity invited to join the forum from South Africa, post-apartheid. And then Patrice Motsepe followed us. Now, our businesses, were largely because of the innovation that we've invested in. So we have the majority of our investments across about 200 are in technology businesses. And we invested there deliberately because through technology we could employ young people, we could innovate for the country, and we could apply technological solutions to help our country. For example, one of the disasters in South Africa today is the hospital systems. They are completely in the public sector, which services 90% of the population, 92% to be frank. Well, not necessarily, so I've got to just rephrase that, maybe 80% of the population. But it's in complete chaos, except the hospitals running our software systems. The ones we run about 400 hospitals. And those are the ones that are running very efficiently, are able to deliver really good patient care, etc., etc., etc. So we invested by design in technology to be able to bring about, kind of these positive changes, which benefits the majority, but it's done in the way through business. And similarly, we've invested in technology in command and control systems. We do that for the African Union for peacekeeping. We do that for NATO for peacekeeping, etc. And we provide security for at least 12 African countries in terms of their borders, etc. And I can go on and on and on. So as a business, yes, we do very well and we create a lot of wealth and we have a lot of employment, but fundamentally, we're adding a lot of value to our country and the African continent by giving them access to these very important technologies. In the media business, which is one of the most difficult businesses we've invested in, and we've not been successful in that business financially speaking. But we were the first black family, black enterprise to actually buy one of the largest, if not the largest media company on the African continent, with 20 newspapers, community newspapers, another 30 or so, as well as magazines and all sorts of things. Now, Until that point in 2013, no media of scale in South Africa, even though we were now more than 20 years after apartheid, or almost 20 years, no media was owned by any black person. So, in other words, the media continued to be owned right until that point by the same people who owned the media. Now, I'll give you the analogy to this. If you
Hold that analogy. I want to get this analogy because when you own the media, I believe this. There's no such thing as freedom of speech unless you own the media. And when you own the media, you control the narrative, the images, and the stories that are being told. And you get to tell the story. This is the Armstrong Williams Show. Fascinating insights here with Dr. Survé. And we'll be back. Don't go away. Welcome back to the broadcast. I want to move the conversation to the Middle East and just how what's going on with the Strait of Hormuz, because this is a big port location in the world, major. How is it impacting you? And I do know there's been some back and forth between our president and your president, especially when it comes to BRICS. I know there are many countries that would like to see that the American almighty dollar is not the world currency. Those issues are going on. I want to get into that with you. But talk about this war. Does it frighten you? How does it impact your business? Give us the perspective of people in a faraway land.
Well, war is never good. War is never good. One can understand the reasons for war, of course, but war itself.
But do you understand the reason for this war?
Yes, of course one does, but I'm saying war is never good because, when we talk about war, we talk in big terms. We talk about countries, we talk about big issues, but on every side of the war, there are ordinary people. Ordinary people suffer. Immediately in the vicinity of the war, families suffer. Young men suffer in particular. Many people die in war, and the effects are felt long after the war is over. So we must never lose sight of that. So war is never the solution. The solution is always diplomacy. The solution is continuing to talk, continuing to keep the channels open, and trying one's very best to contain a difficult situation. It's not always possible, but we have to try and achieve that, no matter one's perspective, because if we don't, innocent people that do not have any control over what is going on in their lives suddenly become victims of this process. Now, the Middle East impacts all of us in the world. Let's start spiritually. The Middle East is the home of the Abrahamic religions that are cousins to each other. The people are cousins to each other. Judaism, Christianity, Islam, all originated in the Middle East. And if anything, they're far more in common than in their differences. And if people can focus on that, that will help. I gave a speech many years ago in Abu Dhabi after I had rescued a Jewish professor who was held there for 9 months and got him released. And I gave a speech to 200 young Arabs who were very upset that I'd come to their country and negotiated the release of the Jewish professor who was 75 years of age. He was a medical professor from South Africa at the time. And they were upset with me that I'd interfered with the sovereignty of the UAE, but I did not do that. When I explained to them they must stop looking at the world in terms of someone is Jewish or Christian or Muslim or Hindu, but look at the world that everyone is a human being, everyone has a family, everyone wants to be loved, everyone wants to be respected, everyone wants to have a place in the world. It changed the whole. 200 people started really actually breaking down after I'd explained all of this to them. And I said, if you want peace, in the Middle East, it starts by recognizing that the people of Israel have a right to exist. So do the people of Saudi Arabia, so do the people of the UAE, so do the people of Iran. But I emphasize the people. But secondly, of course, it's going to affect people from a point of view of resources, because 20 to 30% of the world's oil comes through the Strait of Hormuz. About 40% of the world's oil comes through there, and 60% of the world's cheapest oil comes through there. That's a stat which is often forgotten. Yes, you can mine for oil with shale or with, in the US, and you can do it in...
but it's also about the products that's made from that oil.
Yeah, of course.
It's plastic containers. There's so much more that is involved.
So and it's also the oil curse. We must never forget that, right? It's an oil curse. So I think that if I was President Trump, and I was there with him in Davos
this past January,
I would have done it differently. Firstly, I would have listened to his advisors. I think there are very many smart people in the US that have got institutional knowledge and understanding of geopolitics, in particular the Middle East. And I think if he'd taken their advice, I think they would have suggested perhaps a different way forward in the Middle East. Because the US has got great thinkers, great people in leadership positions. But I don't think President Trump has taken their advice at this point in time. I may be wrong.
How do you think the people of South Africa view the United States now?
I think people love the United States. It's a country of great freedom. We have so much in common. Everything that we do, our restaurants are franchises to the United States. Our movies are all, US. Our social media is all US based. No, I think we are really strongly linked into the USA, and I think African Americans in America have a strong linkage as well. Today, this weekend, we have the Jazz Festival. We have more than 1,000.
Yeah, I'm going to come to the Jazz Festival. Before we get to the festival, I want you to give us a lesson in BRICS and what's going on with BRICS, because South Africa is a big part of BRICS. China, Russia, these countries that would like to see less of the U.S. dollar. Give us a conversation on what people are not understanding in this complex.
I don't think that's necessarily true what you've just said. Correct. It's about the U.S. dollar. I speak from a position of authority, because I was the BRICS Business Council chairman.
Yes, you were.
For South Africa, and I was the chairman for all 5 countries. And I engaged with all the 5 BRICS presidents at the time, and it was 5 countries. And I was one of the key persons that suggested that we actually join the BRICS grouping. And I tell you why. And to give you, again, balance and context, all my business partnerships were with American and European firms, which include the likes of Siemens and Nokia, British Telecom, GlaxoSmithKline, you name it, 14 multinationals. Strong relationship with the US as well from the business side. However, let's be real, the global economy, so the markets go where the global economy is going. The whole idea of globalization came from the US. It didn't come from China. It was the US that was the advocate for globalization. During the 80s, there were critics of globalization, saying globalization is just the US trying to have dominance over the world's economy. My view was very different. My view was that globalization is good because a rising tide lifts all ships. And so, as a result of globalization, Kissinger opened up the doors to China with Nixon at the time. And the
changed the gold standard.
Exactly. And
Yes.
Chinese economy grew dramatically, which is wonderful for the world. Most American products are made today in China. We have to accept that. So why should South Africa not, be part of accessing the global economy? The BRICS is 40% in terms of population of the global economy. In GDP terms, it's 32% of the global economy. So why should we not participate in that economy? I don't think it's to the exclusion of the West. I don't think it's to the exclusion of the US. On the contrary, if we embrace BRICS in a positive way, as we should embrace the US, by the way, and European businesses, you'll find that Africa itself will develop. Africa is a continent of almost, 1.5 million people, GDP of $2 to $3 trillion, has the potential to get to $10 trillion very quickly. We're not going to do that if we cut off 40% of the world's economy to ourselves. No, we have to embrace it. And BRICS is just an expansion of the economy. It's not a military alliance. It's certainly not, in my view, a financial. It's not there to. The dollar is 94% of the world's trade today. If the yuan takes 2 or 3%, it's not even going to shift the world's trade. Come on, let's get very serious. So, those people that suggest that BRICS is about de-dollarization. But if you were China, if you were India, and you have these large populations, you are going to look at financial systems that don't exclusively tie you to the US.
So what are your thoughts on crypto?
Well, I think it's got its place. I don't think it's ever going to replace the existing monetary system. But we mustn't forget, even crypto is being overtaken now by payment systems and other new tech-driven systems. So, look, from the beginning of time, we always exchange things. We just exchange things. Niall Ferguson, in his book on money, shows you how, from the beginning of time, people exchange paper, coins, this, that. We're just doing it differently. And it's natural. There has to be an evolution of how we used to barter. I used to give you a cattle, and you used to give me a sheep. Right? I used to give you something, some food. You used to give me something else. Then we moved on to the gold standard. Then we moved on to
Coffee beans was the currency.
Exactly. So it's no different. You're just simply applying technology. It's like the horse and cart and the motor car. Right?
So you said something earlier I want to come back to before I talk about your book, particularly Styling and the Jazz Festival. You hinted about Israel and the Bible and how significant that history is. So maybe what you're saying is just not policy that's infecting and devastating the world. Maybe it's spiritual illness. People moved away from God, morality. They become greedy, selfish. We don't value families anymore. We don't value one another, each other. It's all about money, even at the expense of humankind. Please.
God teaches you to love your neighbor. God teaches you to love everyone. That's what it's about. Christianity, the very basis of that is to care for other people. Those your family, those around you. Same with Islam, same with Judaism. There is no difference. People take religion and use it for their own ends. But religion itself is very good. It's got fundamentally good values. If the three religions can find each other in the Middle East, the world will have another 100 years of peace. Of course. And there have been great thinking, great ideas, great innovation that's come out of the middle of the world, which is the middle. That's why it's called the Middle East, right? It's the middle of the world.
And I think what you're also indicating is that many great empires, whether it was the Ottoman, whether it's the British Empire, the Roman Empire, all fell not because of military might, because of moral decay.
Of course, yes, of course. And those that lasted the longest were those that emphasized caring for their subjects that they had conquered. And I'm hopeful, Armstrong. I'm hopeful that, sometimes you have to go through great difficulties, period of great instability in order to achieve a much greater level of peace and growth. And I think it will come. I think the world is going through a difficult time. People have lost, social media. Let me tell you one important point.
Let's come. We're going to come back to it now. When we do come back, you got to take this book here on the Survé family is just really a fantastic read. It's heavy. It's like the weight of gold. But this is a gold piece. But anyhow, we're going to talk about the book. We're going to talk about one of the most popular jazz festivals in the world, the Cape Town Jazz Festival. We're back for our second year in a row, that 14-hour flight all the way here to sit down with Dr. Survé and also to attend that fabulous jazz festival. I'm Armstrong Williams, and we'll be back. You know, one of my favorite pastimes is reading. You know, I must read probably 2 books a week. I've just finished reading Frederick Buck Douglass's biography. I'm reading The American Revolution. But anyhow, I was looking for the book, and the Survé Family Investments, Philanthropy, and Global Initiatives. Dr. Survé Sword, I have a lot of respect for. I said, out of respect, let me just read the book. And I want to tell you, this is one of the best reads, man. I'm telling you, it's epic. I mean, this is epic. There's something everybody should read, because everything, I don't think when you finish this, whatever you left on the table, everything you wanted to say, you said it between these pages. Talk about this epic collection here inside this book.
Well, as a family, we wanted to document our family journey. And it was really simple. It was to talk a little bit about the family's investments and the difference it has made in the business world and the impact on people. And then on philanthropy, we've supported projects throughout the world. And then, of course, the global initiatives that we're part of, the networks, etc., from the north to the south to the east and the west. And I think what we tried, and you'll see the family crest is the communis humanitas, which means a shared humanity, a future for a shared humanity. What we were trying to do through the book is to say that it's possible to have a shared humanity, to have the people of the world linking up together. And as an example, the work that we've done as a family is actually to link up people from different parts of the world, not to see each other as, being only in one particular area. That was the one reason for the book. The second was gratitude, to say thank you. Our journey, coming from the humble backgrounds and beginnings that we came, it's easy to stand up here today and say, our success is only our success. We've achieved much. We've been able to give back so much because we did all of it. Well, the truth is that every journey has its fellow travelers. And these travelers started from a very early age, in my life certainly, through the anti-apartheid struggle, right through the time I was a doctor, right through the time that I became a businessman. And I wanted to say thank you to each and every one that contributed to that journey and continues to contribute. Also, the book was written for our almost 10,000 employees. So every employee got a personal signed copy of the book. We went and visited all of our businesses throughout the country over the last month or two, and we were able to speak to the book, and it's their book as much as it's ours. So it was really about the journey. But if you do read the book, there's one message in the book, and that, it's possible to do good and do well. And that's what we have to try and aim in life, is to do good. No one is perfect in life. No one does everything perfectly. Not myself, not our family. But the important thing is to try and make a difference. But to do so, I'm a strong believer in the market economy. And I'm a believer that through the markets, you can actually bring fundamental changes to society, because that allows you the freedom to do that. To become an entrepreneur is wonderful. And so that is the journey. And it's a journey to inspire others.
So how did you start the Cape Town Jazz Festival? I mean, when I tell people I'm going to the Jazz Festival, they think I'm going to Helper. Jazz Festival, they don't think it's one of the best, they think it's the best.
On like Miles Davis.
Would say that. And I must tell you, oh, shit, listen, that Jazz Festival we attended, it was so, I couldn't believe the number of people. I couldn't believe every place was packed. And you had such a variety of artists. I thought I walked into rock and roll. I thought I walked into opera. I thought I walked into classical. I thought I walked into blues. I thought I walked into gospel. I thought I walked into contemporary. I thought I walked into country. How do you do it?
Well, Armstrong, jazz is the melody of the soul. And jazz connects you to people. It also connects you spiritually. It connects you to your past. Jazz is history. That's what's really special about it. You know, African Americans and South Africans have a lot in common. But the one thing that we have in common the most is jazz. So many people came from New Orleans, Louisiana to South Africa and went across from Africa. And that has continued. So we have about 1,000 Americans coming. I want to give you another interesting fact. South Africa now, its biggest tourism population is from the US, in spite of the difficulties with Trump and the president. So we have 350,000 visitors from the US.
Are there
this year.
difficulties with our president?
Sorry?
Despite the
difficulties, it's actually increased. So Americans are flocking to South Africa. They are now outnumbered. The Europeans used to be our number one, sort of tourists coming in, but now it's the Americans.
What brings them here? I know we're here. What
I
brings
think
everybody
the
else?
beauty of Cape Town, of course, the Cape Town International Jazz Festival, but also the history. Americans identify with South African people in particular. So the Jazz Festival, well, you know, it's a wider ecosystem. So we support about 120 schools that are in poorest communities with teachers, music instruments. We have our own jazz orchestra. We have jazz academies. We have jazz bursaries and scholarships. And then, of course, kind of the culmination of all of that is the 4th ranked jazz festival in the world, which is called the Cape Town International Jazz Festival. This year, I think we'll have 35,000 people attending.
Yeah,
sold out.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Tribute to you and your organization.
We have a lot of Grammy award-winning artists performing this year. We have some of the icons of the world performing this year. But also, we have the most amazing emergent talent from Africa that's performing this year. And, you know, there's everything in it for everyone. If you like classical jazz, you're going to sit in the auditorium. If you like the Amapiano, which is something new on the continent, you're gonna love the Scorpion Kings. If you love Jacob Collier with his style of jazz, Yusuf Days from London, brilliant drummer. It's just, you know, I just wish that I could watch every performance, but unfortunately,
you do a pretty good job. You remind me of something. You know, I've been all over Africa. Since there are very few places in Africa I've not visited. What's so interesting about Cape Town, and I don't want nobody to take this the wrong way, okay? I actually feel like I'm in America. It's more American culture to me than it is Africa.
Yeah, for sure.
Why is that?
Well, you know, we have very strong links with the West, whether you like it or not. We take the good and we take the bad. So, you know, it's a bit of both, right? So, but the whole of South Africa, not just Cape Town, the whole of South Africa, we have very strong links with the US. That's the reality. Despite the politicians, despite the governments, you know, and that's the sad thing of what I think is happening is that I think President Trump is confusing the political leadership of the country with the people of the country. The people of South Africa love the US. They love Americans, and you can see it. You know, if you see the American tourists here, they love it. They come here. They are treated very warmly, you know, friendly, and you know, I've had so many friends from the US come over and said, you know, man, we're going to buy a place here. We're going to come and stay here. This place is just
the beauty
amazing.
here is unsurpassed. I mean, Table Mountain, Stellenbosch. I mean, you can go up to Joburg, and do Kruger National Park. I mean, listen, 18, we were all having dinner. Brandon and Kevin, we were having dinner this week, and the people just have such a servant spirit. The nicest. You just want to tip them all your money. You just want to leave all your money with them.
Beautiful people.
It's just crazy.
The nicest people.
The nicest, most
Honestly,
wonderful human, pure
down
people.
to earth. It's amazing people, and that's what Cape Town can teach the world. Tolerance. The religions here live in peace. No issues. No problems. People live in peace. They, and I think that's the beauty of Cape Town.
Let me tell you what I was struck by, because we deal with a lot of attitudes in restaurants back in the States. I asked Cole, who works for you, the many of these workers come into these places and work, then go back to the shanty towns. And he said, yes, they have no attitude, no chip on their shoulder. They're not angry with nobody. I mean, it blows me away. And they have every reason to be upset.
Well, we are very religious, and people are very forgiving. And they believe in God, and they do believe that in time, things will get better. And of course, we have to make sure that that happens much more quicker, that the physical conditions of people does improve under which they live. I think that there is that intent to do that from our leadership in the country. I'm not talking politicians. I'm talking, civil society, academia, professionals, and everyone else. We just have to find each other, and we will find each other.
I think we think about what you built all around the world. Would you ever just take a leave and sacrifice it all and run for president someday of this country? Because you have the vision, you have the experience, you walk with the people. Have you ever considered politics? You hesitate.
It's not about whether I have a family. I value that.
We understand that.
I value my close friends. But on Sunday evening, I spoke at the 80th birthday of one of the icons of the struggle of South Africa. And it was widely reported all over the media. And I think so many people found a lot of a sort of alignment with what I was saying. But this is the point I want to make. After the speech, so many people came to me and said, look, you're the only one carrying Mandela's spirit into the new South Africa, and we think that you should lead, and you should make yourself available.
To run for president?
Of course, to be party to something like that. I've always listened to everyone. I'm not sure that I want to do that.
I like the way you're talking, by the way.
I'm not sure.
I like what you're saying.
But I'm a good listener.
You're saying a lot. And listen, I believe that you've inspired me in how you responded to the question. We have about a minute left in the broadcast. We packed so much information inside this show today. It's crazy. What would you like to say? What are your final thoughts?
Let's find each other in the world today. We don't need the aggravation. We don't need war. Let's accept that people have a right to exist no matter where they are. Let's find and build a bridge between that right to exist and prosperity in the world. And we have more in common than we have with differences. And it's possible. It's possible. The world has improved in the last 100 years. The quality of life of people has improved. Let's set the task to improve the lives of people the next 100 years.
I want to remind our audience on something that Dr. Survé just said. Since the founding of our nation, the United States of America, there's only been 16 years in our entire history, and this is our 250th anniversary, that America has ever been at peace. America is a warring nation, whether it's the Spanish-American Wars, Iraq, whether it's Syria, or whether it's the Civil War, the American Revolutionary War. That's who we are. And when you become a superpower, there's even more responsibility that you have to continue to be the protector of the world. And if you think if anytime soon that America is going to stop being a warring nation, it's not going to change. In fact, it will probably get worse. I just thought I'd remind you of that history. Only 16 years. There is no war in the United States. So take it for what it is. Now, sir, it has been such an honor.
Thank you so much, Armstrong. It's been wonderful.
Oh, it's been really
good
fantastic.
to see you.
Did you enjoy this as much as we did? I know you did. Thank you so much for joining us for this edition of the Armstrong Williams Show.